So we give it a couple more minutes. One thing about someone coming. Stanley is a grad student at USF. So I'm going to turn this over to Sade for the introductions, and then we'll proceed, okay? Sade,
Right.
if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you all for coming and joining us tonight. So tonight we have an event, a virtual event called Following in the Footsteps of Our Hidden Figures, Taking the Next Step in STEM with Graduate School. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and then about some of our panelists or presenters. So my name is Sade King. I'm a PhD student studying computer science and engineering here at USF, and I'm under the advisement of Dr. Tempest Neal. And I'll just go down the list that I have here. So starting with Odi Naka, she is a PhD student in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at UT Austin. She earned her US in Electrical Engineering at USF in 2019. Then we have Arissa, if you can give us a wave. She's a PhD student in the Joint Department of Biomedical Engineering at both North Carolina State University and UNC Chapel Hill. And she earned her BS in chemistry at USF in fall of 2020. We also have Sasha Williams, PhD student in the Department of Engineering at Michigan State University. And Tasha earned her BS of Mechanical Engineering in 2017. And lastly, we have Ms. Khadijah Zana, PhD student in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Rice University in Houston, Texas. Khadijah earned her BS of Computer Engineering back in 2018, and she also earned her MS of Computer Engineering in 2020. So thank you all for joining us today. Okay, so we are going to have each panelist introduce themselves. You all have slides, is that correct? Okay, great. So we'll just go in the same order that I just introduced you. We can start with Renata, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Let me see if I can share my screen here. Can you all see the presentation, the slideshow?
We see your teams right now.
My teams?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll just give you a few seconds because right now I'm on my slideshow.
No problem.
Are you now able to see this PowerPoint?
We see ourselves.
Yeah, we're still seeing ourselves on Teams.
Okay, so just to check, if I want to share, I just click the like open share tray and then click on desktop window. Okay, so I'm doing that and it's still not okay. I think it's working now. Let me quickly put on the slideshow and then go from there.
Sure.
Sorry, I meant to be tech savvy. Okay, can you all see the presentation slides now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Hi, okay. So just thank you, Syed, for the introduction. So like she mentioned, I'm a proud USF alumni. I graduated in fall 2019 with my bachelor's in electrical engineering. And from there, I'm currently studying at UT Austin, doing a master's to PhD program in electrical and computer engineering with a focus in power electronics and power systems. And I currently work with Professor Hansen and also a research center that is on campus called CEM. A bit about my research interest. So right now I'm doing both power electronics and power systems. I initially have a power systems background in undergrad, but coming to UT Austin, my interest shifted as I got to know Professor Alex Hansen, my supervising professor. So I began working in power electronics, mainly focusing on high frequency magnetics and finding ways to improve their performances. And thankfully, Joe, based on the interview and the conversations that I've had with my supervising professor, he was able to connect me to another project related to what my main interest is, which is power systems. So now I work with a research center, and the current project I'm working on is related to DC microgrids and detecting different faults and protecting the system from fault currents and other aspects like that. Um, with my research interest, it kind of ties into two different aspects, whether I want to go pursue more of my professional career in the power industry or moving more towards academia. And I think I'm going to do a bit of both. And thankfully, with the opportunities that I have here at UT Austin, I'm able to get internships, do research projects that are funded by industrial personnel. So with that, I have different directions that I can take upon graduation, whether sticking with academia, maybe working as a faculty at UT Austin or any other recommended school, or shifting gears towards working in the industry. So that's a bit about me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions presented as we progress throughout this event. So I'll pass it on to the next panelist.
Thank you so much, Odinaka. So our next person is Arissa, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Did you upload from your computer? Because I see
Yeah,
there's a I don't want to. Let's see what it does. Mm. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So as briefly stated a second ago, I am Aisha Simpson. I am a current second year PhD student at the Joint Department of Biomedical Engineering. We're between UNC Chapel Hill and NC State. I have 7 slides, but I'm kind of going to go through them fast. So a little bit about me. In undergrad, I was a part of student support services, and this is geared towards first generation or low income homes. I think this really shaped my transition into grad school. But as we get more into the panel discussion, I'll talk a little bit more about that. I studied chemical engineering in undergrad. I personally studied chemical engineering for the high chemistry background and high median salary. But I quickly learned that I didn't have passion for chemical engineering. And so I explored research opportunities in biomedical engineering, and I got accepted into a REU at Baylor's College of Medicine. And that was kind of my first exposure to research. I loved it. And so this was one of the reasons that sparked my interest into applying to grad school programs. Everybody attends grad school for a variety of reasons. Me specifically, I'm considering academia right now. Hopefully, I can do a postdoc with the US Army, specifically looking at hemostatic materials. But also, I think grad school is great to continue to contribute to the advancement of minorities. And then here are some pictures. This is my lab at the moment. If you look here in the middle, that's my PI, Dr. Ashley Brown, and of course, other graduate and postdocs in the lab. And then here are some of my accomplishments for the last 2 years. And so that's a little introduction to who I am.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Arissa.
Yeah, no problem.
Our next panelist is Tasha. If you don't mind sharing your slides with us, please.
All right. See if I can get this right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So, as you said, my name's Tasha. I'm a fifth year PhD student at Michigan State University. I'm originally from Florida. I graduated from USF in 2017. So I went direct PhD route. In my free time, I like to play music, sing, play basketball, and some other stuff. Um, so I don't have many slides. I'm just gonna say that now. We got these three. Uh, but my experience is I work in a turbo machinery lab. I work with screw compressors, and I pretty much do experiments on them and how to model the or understand the thermodynamic effects that changes the performance. Um, and then I also look at some things numerically to understand the things that we can't get with an experiment. So then I also, outside of research, I worked at General Electric in 2018 for an internship. And then the next summer, I went to Train Technologies because they work with screw compressors and it directly linked me with my research where I can get some of the expertise in on it. And I've been working there since 2019. I'm also transitioning to full time there after I graduate this spring. And in my free time, outside of my hobbies, I like to volunteer while tutoring and mentoring first year underrepresented students um, in engineering program. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tasha. Our next panelist is Khadijah.
So I'm gonna try this sharing thing. Seems like
Yeah,
everyone got it, but
we'll see how it goes.
what can you see? Can you see anything?
We see ourselves, the teams.
Okay. Oh shit. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm gonna try this again. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, cool, cool. Um, all right. I also have only 3 slides, so
Hi, Khadija.
hi.
That's pretty.
So hi everyone. My name is Khadijah. I'm a PhD student currently at the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department at Rice University. I'm originally from Nigeria, hence the flag, and I yeah, that's about it in the slide. So moving on. Something about my education and professional timeline. I started USF in 2014 with my BS in computer engineering and graduated in 2018. And then I did my master's in the same program from 2018 to 2020. And then I worked for a year at IBM Research as a research software developer from 2020 to 2021, and then I enrolled in my current PhD program at Rice last year in August. And some of my research interests is effective computing and emotion research and mental health applications of those. And also, I'm looking into bias in that field, so effective computing and emotion research. And then recently, I have started to develop interest in AI ethics as well. Um, I mean, I'm fairly new. I just started, so I haven't really gone in depth in my research area yet. But in case anyone is wondering what machine learning is, this meme is going to explain basically what it is. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Khadijah. Okay, so now we're going to transition into the question and answer part of the event. So I am going to ask our panelists some questions. Feel free, whoever you feel like it applies to, or if you have a comment on it, to go ahead and answer. And then after we finish with these questions, we'll go ahead and open it up to the audience. So our first question is, why did you decide to apply and enroll in a graduate program, specifically a PhD program?
I can go. I enrolled into a PhD program because I like to teach in my mind. I wanted to be a professor and kind of be a minority in the space in mechanical engineering. I haven't really seen many um, Black professors, especially women, and so I wanted to also be that so that other girls like myself could um, have somebody to look up to and know that if I did it, that they can do it too.
Yeah, that's great.
I can go next.
Sure.
I have a slightly different answer. So I can say guaranteed 100% it was Mr. Batson. I don't think he knows this, but after undergrad, I was planning to go to the Peace Corps or enlist in the military. So grad school was really not on my radar. I personally didn't think I would get into any program. So it's kind of like, we'll see who accepts me. But I am definitely blessed for the opportunity. So 100% Mr. Besson.
I'm just gonna add on. Yes, Mr. Basson had a lot to do with it, but he caught me really young. Like I think I was a sophomore. He got me at a sophomore and started
Oh,
putting me
yeah.
in stuff. So by the time I was a senior, I had really formulated the idea for other reasons.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I agree. I think like for me as well, he definitely had a lot to do with me going to grad school. I guess my answer is very different from the both of you. I did not really have any plans of going to graduate school either, but I also wasn't ready to go into the workforce. So when I graduated from my undergrad, it was just a lot of confusion for me as to what I was supposed to do after that. And then Mr. Batson, who I was talking to about this, mentioned how I should look into grad school. And I was like, it's kind of too late and all that. And then he told me about a new faculty that was coming to USF and told me to look her up. And then I was really interested in her research. So I got excited about that. And then I started my master's at USF. And then going into my PhD was kind of almost the same way. I kind of, really enjoyed the research process. So, and then I looked at, just the different research interests that I had. And sort of also, I think one of the things was the lack of representation, in higher ed. So I was like, oh, why not? So here we are.
Um, for
Okay.
me, For me, I already knew when I was going into high school, so the 10th grade, that I needed to get a doctorate. And not because I had any interest in research, but it was more so of my career goal. Because I want to go back to my country, help my community, and there's so many things that I had in mind for how I can improve the power industry in my country. But I knew that one way to get there was to have like a good title. So like a doctor in my name or like would show that I have expertise and I have the resources needed to carry out these projects without having any interference from the political aspects of things. So that was the main reason why I wanted to go towards my PhD. And then the next question was when to apply, whether to go straight from undergrad or to work first. And like like you said, like Mr. Batson really helps having a supportive community there to constantly remind you of your objectives and to really help you understand what parts and the different resources that you do have to achieve your goals. So Mr. Batson, my family, different professors that I worked with at USF, Dr. Takshi. So those people really helped me deciding to apply. And then I decided to accept the PhD because around 2020 was when COVID hit. So like doing anything outside of the US was risky and enrolling into a PhD was much more secure because I could not only complete my education but also get those professional experiences that I did want, whether through internships or through research projects that I got to work with my professors and other faculty. So yes, I'll say it's a good option, and it's always good to have people around to constantly remind you of your goals because it makes you stay more focused on your track.
I love it. That's an awesome answer. You all had, I love the diversity in your answers, so that's great. Our second question is, can you describe what your typical day is like as a PhD student? And also, what is the most rewarding and frustrating thing about what you do?
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I think it's the freshest in my head. Um, typical day of a PhD student, I think it differs between if you're in a wet versus a dry lab. So I'm in a wet lab. Usually I like planning my experiments like beginning of week. So I know what I'm doing Monday through Sunday, honestly. But you're usually in there. It's like a normal work day, 9 to 5 sometimes. Sometimes it's Saturday and Sunday. If you can avoid it, that'd be great, but sometimes it's unavoidable. I would say the most rewarding thing is, I don't know, just contributing to research as a whole. I think it's always so interesting that we're all exploring something new that hasn't been discovered yet, and we're becoming, I don't know, like specialists in that specific area of our research. But probably in that, the most frustrating thing is patience, for sure. So research is a lot of patience, something that I think I'm continuously growing on. But when experiments fail, when things aren't just going in the direction that you expect them to, it's really hard to, I guess, motivate yourself to keep doing it, or, take a step back and seeing how to move forward.
Yeah, I agree with her. It's a lot of patience needed. A typical day is definitely not a 9 to 5 for me. More like, I mean, I don't wake up early, so really the morning doesn't count. But more like afternoon to like the middle of the night. That's more like it. It's I mean, my program has been really, really, really stressful since I started. So that's the frustrating part is just you have a lot to do, and sometimes the learning curve is really, really frustrating. Like when you start off, you feel like you don't really know anything. You kind of feel like almost like you don't belong there sometimes because you don't know as much as other people. But you just have to understand everybody went through that learning curve, and you'll be fine as well. The most rewarding part, like she said, just knowing, you're working on novel ideas, like coming up with things that are probably going to have, hopefully like huge impacts in the world. And also something else that I recently realized I really enjoy being in a PhD program is the conversations I get to have with certain people. As somebody who is in academia, sometimes you're placed in settings a lot where you tend to have very intelligent conversations with people that you otherwise probably would not meet. So I think that's something I really, really enjoy about it as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm with Khadijah. My days they typically start pretty late and they go pretty late. But I think also as a fifth year student, my what a day looked like each year was very, very different. When you first starting off, you're more coursework. It's more coursework heavy, and then you start to move into more research. Before I really got into my research, I was doing more reading, lit review, trying to understand my research and things like that. So the day was going to classes and then doing homework and then trying to put in research a little bit here and there. Now it's more unstructured because I'm not really taking classes and I come in when I want, I do what I want, and then I leave. Long as I show up to like my advisor meetings. Um, but I think throughout the years, the most frustrating thing to me is like dealing with people I don't like on my committee. Just gotta say that, some people love their advisor. I do not love mine. And so we're cool, we get along to get things going, but he really irks my nerves. So that's probably the most frustrating part. If I'm struggling with something, he says the dumbest stuff like, "You're a PhD student, figure it out." I'm like, what kind of answer is that? And he knows the answer. That's what's the most frustrating thing. But I think for me, the rewarding thing is to figure out the stuff that he wouldn't tell me, and then I learn so much more stuff that he don't even know, and then kind of pushing information forward and being, Black woman in this space and owning it.
Tasha's
That's,
become a pro in patience.
yes. I was like grunting as you were talking about the lit review because that's where I am at right now. I'm like, Okay, our next question is, so what does it mean to you to be a young Black scientist? And why is it important that we have Black PhD scientists and engineers? You all touched on that a little bit, but if you have any other comments, that would be great.
I mean, of course, like they mentioned earlier, representation is a big thing, especially in a field like mine. Like, one of the main reasons why I went into the bias aspect of machine learning is because if you don't have that sort of representation, you don't realize, honestly, you don't know how much people don't think about certain things. Like, if people are not going through experiences, they do not think about things the way you do. So having someone in the room who has a different perspective is so, so, so important.
Absolutely. I'm just going to piggyback off that. Engineers, people in science and STEM as a whole are the ones that are pushing technology and things like that. And when they're creating devices and all of these different things, if we're not in the room, we cannot advocate for ourselves. We can't say actually. People who use this device, like in my community, probably benefit from this, but we get written out of it because we're not there. And so, I think being in those circles and forcing people to think about something outside of themselves, not just black and white, but all different types of diversity. It really allows companies, science and everything to have a better product and go further in the long run.
Yeah, and to add to that, like representation is really good. And when you have people who are already in the field, they're like showing such good influences and making people aware of like the promises and the positive impacts that black engineers, black scientists do have in the community. Then when we come in, like when I work, for instance, like right now, when I walk into a room as a young black scientist, people don't just see my skin color, but they know that I am bringing something innovative to the table. So when you have representation there who are really leading like a good exemplary um, attitude or action or whatever, like it helps others and it brings much more meaning whenever you see other people that from that particular group of fair of life rather. So that's good.
I think everybody spoke on representation, but I think it's super important, especially when you're looking at, the future generation and the youth. You wouldn't believe how many middle schoolers, high schoolers are still trying to figure out, especially in underrepresented communities, what is engineering? And sadly enough, a lot of them aren't interested in it. And I just think it's because they haven't had exposure to the field, which is extremely unfortunate. But I think it's important as we all sit here as Black female engineers, definitely to be that representation for, that local high school or middle school.
Yeah, that's why I really enjoyed Engineering Expo because that brought in like K to 12 scholars from like local regions, every part of Tampa, for them to get to know what was in there, like in the STEM field. So that really helps to like shine the light as they also have examples already in the field for who they can look up to. That's good stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there was also a program that Dr. Jonathan Gaines heads up. I'm not sure if it's still going on, but the Bullseye program, if you guys are familiar, really awesome. You're teaching like middle school age kids about robotics. So that's another like super rewarding way to engage with some of the youth in the Tampa area. So, what message would you like to send to young Black students who are interested in cancer research?
It's so funny when I heard cancer research, I was like, isn't that medicine? But then I think that's where knowing stuff really comes into play because literally in the room next door to my office, there's a whole lab, like so many labs out there where you see engineers doing research related to cancer or like different aspects in the medical field. So if you're interested, whatever research you're interested in, if it's cancer research, go for it. You have the resources, use your online resources, get personal information, exactly what you're interested in, and then use your in-person resources like Mr. Batson to connect you with those people you can speak with, job shadows, volunteers, internships, to help you really decide what you want to commit on. So go on, rock on, go Bulls.
We love a good go Bulls, as always.
I think like, any sort of research any Black kid is interested in. It's sometimes, I mean, I'm in Rice University. It's a private, predominantly white institution that has maybe 5 Black people.
Right.
It's really bad. So coming here really, like, it took all of my strength and all of my willpower to make myself believe that I belong here. And I think, in the STEM field or in higher ed in general, we don't have that sort of representation. So to any Black kid, just know at the end of the day, you belong there. Nobody can take it away from you. And also, you don't have to work times 5 to feel like you belong there. I think that's very important as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's always that feeling of that you have to be twice as good. So it's good to just kind of stand on your own and know your worth. That's great. So I'm not sure if you all touched on career goals. I know that Tasha mentioned that she's working while she's doing her PhD, but if you all don't mind sharing with us, what are your career goals after you finish your PhD? I also think, Alyssa, you touched on it as well, right? Working at AmRed.
Yeah, well, those are like hypotheses right now. We'll see how that develops at the end of year 4.
Okay.
Yeah, like Arisa said, hypothesis, like it changes almost, hopefully, thankfully not every day, but definitely every semester. The more you get to know things, the more knowledgeable you become about opportunities out there for you for professional growth. You begin to see things in a different way. So I know initially coming into the PhD, I wanted to first go into the industry and then find my way back to academia, like maybe be a lecturer while still working in the industry. But right now, I'm more leaning towards academia, and I won't be surprised if after this semester I might want to become a researcher. So so yeah, so it changes, but what's good is that you know the opportunities are there for you to grow. And as you're making up your mind and you're thinking about these things, like it helps you a lot in finally deciding what you want to do.
I think I change daily, definitely. Probably hourly. Probably hourly.
I think mine has remained the same for the most part. I've never wanted to be in academia. I'm still going, still haven't changed my mind, even though I have a professor here who said they will brainwash me before I'm done with my program and I would want to go into academia. But for now, it's industry. I think I would, the way I think about it, I would love to see my ideas make, those real world impacts. Of course, like from academia, it will, but it's kind of like a long way before you see that impact. So I would definitely love to work in industry. Also, the pay is way better. And I don't want to write um, grant proposals. So there's that.
Yeah, for me, I've always wanted to do both. So industry first, and then um, maybe move into uh, being a professor at some point. So like, even when I decided I wanted to work writing or having a position that it still allows me to do research and still publish papers was kind of important to me. So like, in my process with my job, I asked, can a sister publish? Because I'm never going to be able to go into academia if I don't publish. So I got to keep writing, even though I'm in industry. But I think I want it to be, most students when they come to engineering, they want to go to industry, not, you know, PhD. So I wanted to, be able to connect with them and be like, yeah, this is what it's like in industry, not being like, I've never been there. I don't know anything about it. So I want to be able to have that connection. And then I think while once I get full time, I think I'll become a lecturer at some nearby college or something because I like to teach.
Thank you so much. Those are all great answers. Yeah, I think that like a lot of you, it's so easy to kind of get caught up in the back and forth. So it's just interesting to hear kind of where that has led you all versus changing every day or to sticking to your guns like Tasha and remaining firm. So that's great to hear. So at this time, we're going to open it up to questions from our audience. I guess if you have a question, you can use the hand raise feature, or you can unmute yourself if you feel so bold, or drop it in the chat, whatever you like. Any questions? If we don't have any, I'll ask one. Tasha, I'm interested to hear about how you maintain that work balance, or I guess the balance between like doing work in industry while working on your dissertation or your PhD. What is that like, and how have you maintained that?
I don't work all the time. I work part-time as I can. So I work full-time in the summers, and then like I work part-time during the school year. But if I cannot work because research is, too much and I have a lot going on, then I just tell my boss I'm not going to be in here this week, or I'm not going to be in for the next 2 weeks. I got an hour, on the clock. My job is very understanding that they always say school is first. We come second. So that's just how I've done it. These last 2 years have been extremely stressful with doing both of them. I've been ready to like just call my job and say I quit. I don't want to come back next week or the week after. I'm done. All of this work is piling up on me. But I just I just show up, I do as much as I can, and I'm very transparent and honest about what my limits are and what I can and can't do.
Thank you for that. Yeah, good feedback. Um, do any of our other panelists, do you have any comments on, I guess, juggling your research with other projects that maybe you have to work on in the lab? Any of that time management struggle that you want to comment on?
I think it just kind of comes. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I think my first year, I didn't have any boundaries in terms of like work-life balance, not at all. And I burned out super quickly too. And so moving into my second year, I had a little more flexibility. I had less classes. I was starting to take over my projects. So they were becoming my own. And so once they're your own, you can kind of decide your own schedule at that point. And I think once I was able to decide my own schedule from there, it's very clear on, what times I'm going to do research. I know when I need to take a break. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Year 3 hasn't come yet when there's no classes. So we'll see how I reflect next year.
Fair enough.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hi. Great presentations and wonderful conversation. So I actually have, if there are no questions from the students, I have 3 questions, additional questions.
Hold on, Mr. Bass. I think somebody has their hand up.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, we'll let Stanley go. Okay, Stanley.
Hi, good evening.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say nice events. Nice hearing the panelists talk. I think I know quite a few people here, Khadijah and Odinaka. I'm not sure she remember, but we graduated during the same graduation in 2018 when I was doing my master's. So and, I'm also from Nigeria. I'm doing my PhD in USF. I came to USF in 2018. I did my master's and graduated in fall of 2019, and currently I'm in my 3rd year PhD. So it's nice getting to hear all of us here talking about the PhD program, graduate program. But my question is also to ask you guys, so how do you deal with periods, maybe like, for instance, I know in PhD program you tend to do like a couple of projects, Especially sometimes it starts off on a project. That's not that might not be part of your dissertation because I mean you start out some of these projects, you do them, you learn a few things, and then your project changes. And so during those periods when you transition to a new project, how do you deal with the initial struggle, and how does your relationship with your supervisors work? Because sometimes it looks like supervisors are not patient with you when you're really trying to adapt to new let's say a particular project you worked on is totally different from the new one you're doing, you know. So how do you deal with those time phases when you have so much pressure from your supervisor on okay, like you have to learn so fast and it feels like maybe you're not learning so fast?
So I'll actually take this one because right now I transitioned from a previous project to a new project, and with this new project coming into it, or actually during the first meeting that I had with um, the person I was going to be working under. So I still have my supervising professor that I reach out to, but the project is led by a different research center. So I have a different supervisor over there. But what was really good is that at the initial start of the meeting, they kind of broke. I directly asked them exactly the timeline for the learning curve as well as when they do expect me to start imputing into the conversation. So that really helped me a lot with trying to manage my time and really see how fast I can adapt to this new project. And with my research supervisor that I came in with under the PhD program, he is a young professor. So ideally, you expect that he's much more strict, much more rushed on how quickly you can get used to the project. But he's a chill guy in the sense that we do have our meetings weekly, which is really good. So that way I'm up and going with my work. I'm able to update him and get my questions answered. So that does help me. But I guess all in all is um, the type of professor that you're working with, definitely, but making sure that you also have your personal routine and you're constantly communicating because that's really key. Because although I'm doing my new project, I'm still trying to wrap up my old project and trying to get experimental work done on that previous project. So that constant communication with both people and having a detailed schedule of what I want to accomplish, at least for the first 2 months for each phase of the project, really is helping me right now.
Yeah, thank you. So I think I also have another question. Maybe this might help for those incoming, maybe undergraduates who want to go straight to a PhD program. So what would you guys advise personally, based on your experience also, would you advise working with like supervisors who are like fresh, like you have, Odinaka, you said you have your supervisors like young, I have the same thing. So I think for me, the difference is always this issue of pressure. It looks like new supervisors or new professors, once they come in, you know, they have this ambition, they have to, you know, like they come in on grants, and it looks like the pressure that they mount sometimes can drive you crazy, you know. I remember when I started my PhD, that was spring of 2020, and I went straight into a project that was like 1 year funded, and it was like during the pandemic, I was working like even when everybody was shut, I mean, everywhere was shut down, I was going to the lab like very early, coming back late. So there was just no. So it was really like, it almost drove me crazy. Even though I made eventually was able to achieve the goal, but it was so stressful. So what is your own recommendation, especially for those that want to come in? Like, would you advise professors who are like mid-career range, or those that are just starting out, or like old professors, you know, or those that have like been in the field for a very long time? Because sometimes these are things that maybe prospective graduate students don't know, and then they get in and they can't really manage that amount of pressure when it comes to working in graduate school program.
Yeah, it's funny because I recently had this conversation with Mr. Batson actually about this because I'm kind of going through something similar. My advisor is fairly new, so there's a lot of pressure and also just a lot of miscommunication and stuff between us. What I would personally say is it's kind of like a slippery slope on what, like, to choose one or the other, because it could go either way, right? Like, you could get a lot of pressure, or you could have a reasonable person. Like, when I did my master's, I had the same advisor as Shade does, and she was very understanding. She was new, but she understood there's a learning curve, and she kind of walks me through everything, which was really nice. So, but I'm experiencing the opposite here. And then when it comes to the older professors who, they're tenured, they're comfortable, you might encounter one who is, supportive and no pressure and just walks you through the whole thing. Or you could encounter somebody who is kind of just done with the whole thing and doesn't really have any motivation to even invest in your success. So I think what I would say to people looking into PhD programs is to make sure you speak extensively to the person you are thinking of working with. Ask all the questions that you can think of, because at the end of the day, they're interviewing you, but you're interviewing them too. So if you guys don't get along, that is going to ruin your PhD experience. Of course, you can switch advisors, It's not like once you choose one person, that's the end all be all. But make sure you communicate. Make sure you ask all those questions that you think, even if you think they're dumb questions, they're not. Ask all the questions. Don't feel like you're in a position where you cannot question them on certain things.
Yeah, and to add to that, like aside from while you're talking with your professor, also reach out to the students in the group, because the professors do give you the opportunity. Like I know right now in my program, um, this is around the time when professors are trying to get students in, and my professor dedicated a particular group meeting where the prospective students get to interact with the people in the lab without him being present. So reaching out to the group that you're interested in, seeing what the work and the personal dynamics are within that team to see um, how they respond to different environments that the team does present during their PhD program does help a lot.
Something to add also on the pressure bit that I just thought of. If you feel like there are all these expectations that you cannot meet, communicate. Just say, I can do this and this, but I will not be able to complete this and this by next week. They're going to take it or they won't. And then you would know if this is somebody you really want to stick with anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. I've been writing in the chat, but I was like, managing expectations. That's a huge, huge key. You have to have an understanding between each other. Like Odinaka was saying, that constant communication, letting your advisor know where you're at, and understanding what they expect of you is huge. If we don't have any more questions from folks in the audience, Mr. Batson, you can ask questions.
All right, thank you, Sade. So I have a kind of a two-part question. You all talked about in your slides about and also a question about what's your typical day. So how is being a graduate student different than being an undergrad? That's the first. How is it different? And the second part of this question is, how does being in a PhD, what kind of skills that you think you learn as a PhD student that you feel that you probably wouldn't have acquired if you weren't in a graduate program?
I can go, I guess. The skills that I've learned, I think the most important one and the biggest one that I can say is critical thinking skills. Obviously, it's not like I didn't think critically before, but I've being a graduate student and conducting research and going through a particular process, it kind of forces you to think of things in a particular manner that's very organized, where you're able to organize your thoughts more. And Another thing I would say is communication skills. Those presentations, they will force you to talk. And apart from the presentations, there's just people everywhere asking you what your research project is. So you're gonna just learn to explain it in layman's term. So that definitely has helped. And then another thing is, I think reading, like comprehension, now, like, compared to before, I know what I'm looking for in a paper, so I'll know how to approach the paper and read the paper. So I translate that into real world as well. If I'm reading an article of news, whatever, and I don't want to read 5 pages, like, like I could easily find what I want a lot more easier. um, but yeah, and patience.
Yeah, so for me, the first part of the question, undergrad, you kind of go to class, you do your homework, you meet with, friends, whatever. You're going on about your business, have your other life on the side. You kind of schedule your classes when it's convenient to you, or sometimes it's not convenient, but it's the only thing offered. But still, you just have your classes. But then with graduate school, you have your classes, but then there's a layer on top of that where it's like, okay, well, I have research, I have sometimes RA projects that I have to do that doesn't have anything to do with my particular research. You have one-on-one meetings, you have group meetings, you're being pulled all these different directions, and you still have to do good in all of those things. I think like the skills that I've learned is how to just like master a lot of stuff. I think if I would have went into industry, I would have probably did a job that I just wanted to do, something I enjoyed. But with research, you kind of learn you got to do the stuff you don't enjoy too. Um, you know, you're the ones doing the project from the beginning to the end. So it's been a lot of stuff that I had conversations with my advisor in my first year, ignorant old me. I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And then, looking, you know, now I'm like, yeah, I end up having to do all of it. It's grown me in, a tremendous way. I'm able to pick up on a lot of programs um, that I probably wouldn't have been able to. Then I'll echo what Khadijah said, being able to read a research paper, after, you start, you read the whole thing, it takes you forever. Uh, and then you find out when you get to the end, it had none of the information you really wanted in it. But now, I know how to skim an abstract and be like, yep, not the one, not the one. And so those skills, being able just to navigate things in fine detail, ask the right questions like, okay, so you designed this how and with what and what assumptions did you use? And I mean, all of these key questions, like digging down to the nitty gritty of it, you don't really have to do that so much in industry. And so, um, and you don't have to be the one to also know it all because you have a team, and it's pros and cons to it. But I think being knowledgeable in all of the areas to a certain extent is very valuable.
Yeah, that's so good what you guys said. As you guys were talking, I was like, yes, like that's what's happening. I'm like, I could relate. It's always good to be in that position when you can relate with other people and you have somebody that you can talk with. I'll say for me, moving from undergrad to grad school, one thing I definitely do miss is the organizations that I got to be a part of, the leadership roles that I got to do. Because when I came here, although there are grad organizations, it's not as energetic as undergrad. And sometimes I miss that ability for me to grow for personal growth, whether with leadership, networking, social aspects. But with the skills that I did get from undergrad, I know that I'm able to create that for myself. So I don't need to be part of an organization in order for me to have that personal growth that I do want. But one skill that I definitely did get with coming into grad school is taking initiative. Because like Tasha said, you're gonna have questions, is this the project that you're doing? So you have to be extremely knowledgeable, being able to get into the itty gritty of things to be able to explain to people and get the information that you also need. So that's one thing that I know that I definitely had to work on, like being able to step aside and research and get the information that I needed in order to excel in whatever aspect of the project that I was trying to uncover. So that has been a big part for me.
Do we have any other questions? Mr. Batson, do you have another one? Did you say you had two? Or did you ask the two? I can't remember.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, the other one would be, how do you? We all know, and from listening to you, everyone, and sharing your story, and thank you, and being honest too. We really appreciate it. Mentorship is really important, and for everyone, whether you're in grad school, undergrad, industry. So how do you go, or what lessons learned you can for our audience about finding mentors? Keeping in mind, as Black women in engineering or computer science, you're not always going to find, you maybe not find a Black woman to be your mentor, right? That's just a reality of it. So, how do you go about finding mentors, particularly sometimes those who don't look like you?
We wait for those Mr. Batson connections. That's what we do.
No, I'm actually in that situation where I'm still in the finding stage, because where I work, my entire office, I'm the only Black female there. Actually, I'm the only Black person there. So it's quite hard, and I'm always constantly surrounded by guys. And I always joke with my colleagues that I want to get out of this place right now. Like, there are too many men around. Like, we need some more women here. So what I'm currently doing to make sure that I'm not losing myself as a woman and I'm not losing myself as a female engineer is to look for those resources out there that have women engineers. So right now there's a woman in engineering program right in my building, and I've actually set up an appointment to meet with the advisor to ask for resources, like where I can find other women engineers, where I can find other people that can easily get that motivation and continuous inspiration that I need to grow in my field as a woman in a PhD program. So that's my path, and hopefully, if things come out well, I'll definitely let Mr. Batsy know so he can spread the word. But yeah, so that's my path to like making sure that I'm staying encouraged in my program.
I think another key thing to building your network could be your PI. So coming into grad school, I knew I kind of wanted a female PI, to be honest. I think we can relate with each other a lot more, and her background definitely parallels to mine a lot. So we really have some raw conversations. And she's also bridged me into networking at conferences. But I think a lot of the mentors I found in my program came from leadership activity somehow. And so interestingly enough, I'm 10 times more involved in grad school than I ever was in undergrad. I don't know how that happened, but I'm really like going in deep somehow. And through all of those activities, of course, you end up getting nominated for certain awards. And like that leads to, of course, meeting more people. So I would say majority of the mentors that I found so far in my program have come from, that initial step to getting involved within the department.
For me, I would say a lot of my mentors, like those relationships formed very organically. I'm the kind of person who goes by, we get along, I like your energy, So I would say definitely conferences, going to conferences is big. You never know who you run into in the lobby of the hotel, like not even at the convention hall or anything like that. So going to conferences for sure. And then also, like you said, uh, like getting involved. So I currently have an admin who is a Black woman who is one of two Black employees in my entire department. And, I saw her and I was like, we're going to be best friends. And so I got super involved, and like she has been such a strong, support system for me here. And also, I don't know about like you guys' schools, but my school has a lot of, at least like, the little effort they make for the Black students here. They would have speakers come in, or they would have like, we have this bi-weekly luncheons for Black students. So whenever they have these speakers coming, I make sure I go, because that's another way to, to connect with these people and yeah, just honestly, at the end of the day, being yourself, you're going to attract people who are invested in you and your success. And that's the most important part. Like, to recognize in a mentor is somebody who is invested in your success.
On period. Yeah. Um for me, I really don't care if it's a girl, boy, black, white. If you're a mentor and you got the knowledge I want, you're the place that I want. I'll find you and I'll seek you out. And I meet people, like they said, very organically and put myself out there. And I know it's like a common thing for a lot of grad students. They get in grad school and they kind of put their head down and they're so focused on their research that they forget to do stuff or show up to things. But I think it's really important to do those things because the opportunities that come from them are, I mean, you couldn't get it any other way. So I've been asked to do, I've gotten, I think three fellowships from me just being me, just showing up and talking to people and having my personality. I'm the only, I think we have another one. She's a third year now, but I was the only black female in the program for such a long time. And so that opened up a lot of doors. And so I just show up. I think just showing up and not being too picky about who you can get. But I mean, picky about who you can get, but not like on it has to be a female or it has to be, they have to be black. I mean, those things are nice, but that shouldn't disqualify people that have the resources. I think them being invested in you more than anything should be what's, most important. And oftentimes people think that their PI will be their mentor. Often that's not the case. Arissa, she's very lucky. But that is
Shout out to
typically
Ashley.
that is typically not the case. Your PI is your PI, and then you find you a mentor outside of that.
And I'm putting my Mr. Batson hat on to say that, and it's okay to have different mentors for different things, right, Mr. Batson?
Absolutely.
So not one mentor can do it all. You can have a mentor for a bunch of different things. That's like classic Mr. Batson.
I think absolutely. I think the key component for a person of color, for anyone, but particularly for a person of color, a young person of color, is to think about you want people to wear your T-shirt, right? So you want them to be advocating for you when you don't even know it. So whether to we have an undergrads here, whether to internships, when you are there, you seek out mentors or they find you and they're advocating for you long after the internship is done,
Hmm.
right? So if there's an opportunity for a permanent job, full-time employment, they're going to be in your corner. And the same thing as relates to school here, undergrad at USF or in a graduate program. It's very important to have people, as you said, that are truly, truly invested in you, both not only your academic success or your professional success, but in your personal well-being. Whether or not you're okay, or you're healthy, how's everything going. That's what mentors do. And it's okay to have multiple mentors. As a matter of fact, you should have different mentors who are able to support you doing and different things. So I think that's fine.
Yeah, and I just want to say this. It doesn't really go necessarily the question, but at my job, my when I first started at Train, my first summer internship there, um, it was in Wisconsin, in this little small town. There was no black population. The moment I got there, I went to a few restaurants that first week. I never seen another black person not walking on the street. Never happened. So when I was at the job, I was like, man, there's a lot of white people here. There's no black people at the job. I don't know how I feel about this. But everybody seemed so nice. But I already had like this stigma of like, there's nobody like me in here. They're not gonna really like me or whatever. Come to find out, I mean, I ain't never met nobody that rides for Tasha like these people at Train do. I mean, I told them I didn't even want to work at their job. I was like, I don't want to move to Wisconsin. I'm not moving to Wisconsin. You don't even got to make an offer. And they said, "Oh, no worries. Where do you want to go? We have other offices. We want you." And I was like, "But I don't even want to do this job anymore. I think there's something other thing that's fun and exciting." And he was like, "We can transfer you." I was like, he was just so willing. I never had to interview or anything. So I was like, man, these people ride for me like never before. And then they made an offer. I said, it's not enough. You're gonna have to do better than this. They were like, all right, here you go with the offer you want. So I mean, these kind of people you can't just come by every day. And when you get them, you got to be like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna take you however you are. They white and they different from me, but they love me and they invest in me. So I appreciate them for that.
I absolutely love that.
Mhm.
There's
That was so great to hear. Yeah. Okay, I think I saw Stanley had his hand up.
Oh, yeah. One more question.
Hmm.
The next question is directed mainly to the international graduate students here. Khadijah. My question is, do you guys get homesick? Like,
Stanley, it's
think
a little
it's
hard to
for you.
hear you. Your your audio sounds a little muffled.
I think you
Yeah,
said
so,
for international. Oh, sorry.
so I was saying, my question might apply to every other, to, but especially I think for my international graduate students or the Khadijah. So my question is, it's kind of funny a bit, but do you guys get homesick? Like, do you think about that time, like when you really under so much pressure and just like, okay, I'll just go home and take a break from all this. And how do you handle those feeling? And for me, I've been here for like 4 years. I've been working, and I think I'm at that point where I'm like, I just want to go home, take a break, and then maybe come back to
Yeah.
something. How do you guys?
That, oh, sorry. I hope I didn't interrupt you. Those thoughts do come. Actually, when I was 2019, when I was graduating, I really wanted to go back home. And if my mom hadn't set her foot down to let me know, remind me of my objectives, and let me know that right now it's too risky to go back home because you may lose everything. If I didn't have that supportive community there to constantly remind me of what I needed to achieve and the risks that I may encounter if I have to go back home, um, I would have definitely lost a lot of things. So yeah, so the homesickness does come in, but I guess what keeps me going is remembering that I only have 5 years to go to establish myself, and once I establish myself, I'll be able to move back and forth between the US, home, or wherever I want to go to. And I also know that right now, like there's a lot of especially with COVID, there's a lot of immigration restrictions. So thankfully, we have WhatsApp, we have online platforms, and COVID has really made it clear to us how adaptive we can get with our online resources. So for me, I'm constantly calling my family every single day to touch base, doing video calls. So that helps me a lot with relaxing. So that way I don't feel pressured and ready to like buy that one way ticket back home and not realizing exactly what's in stores for me. So that was a good question, definitely. Definitely
yeah.
hits home.
For me, I was actually in Nigeria and I just came back a few weeks ago. Yeah. And when I tell you, when I walked into my apartment and I remembered, oh, now I gotta find food. Now I gotta go to work in the morning at 9 a.m. And then I have to meet with my PI in the afternoon. I was like, I'm trying to go back home. Like being home and having that support, even though I started classes back home and it was rough, with the time difference and everything. But I didn't have to think about what I was gonna eat. I didn't have to think about going to work. Like I would just sit there and look miserable and my mom would feed me. So it was like, it's really rough. But what I would say really helps me while I'm here is having a support system, a good network of friends, I would say, people you could talk to really openly, people that you can contact at any time. There is one other Black girl in my year in my program. So we're kind of like that for each other. And we're constantly just complaining, basically. That's that. It's just a bunch of complaints, but we understand. So nobody, So nobody says anything negative. But yeah, support system.
I would say on the non-international side. So I was born and raised in Tampa. I went to elementary, middle, high school, and college all in the same city. And so going to grad school in North Carolina, I was really not trying to do it. If it was up to me, I probably would have stayed at USF, but we glad we moved out. But uh last year I had like two major deaths in my family, and I was like convinced it's because I moved away from home, and like if I was there, things could have turned out differently, la la la. But I think, as you previously mentioned, having that strong support system, one, but mentors too. So that's what I was I didn't say it, but I was hinting at when I said, I have those raw conversations with my PI. We definitely like had to get our minds right. Also faith is a big thing for me. I don't know where I would be without my Lord and Savior, but I think that also keeps me, focused on what I'm here to do and ultimately the end goal.
Those are awesome, awesome, awesome recommendations. And for all of us, I mean, for domestic students as well, like Arissa said, but also for our international students. Little tidbit, there's actually someone in our lab who he went back home. He was like, I'm not doing this. And so he went home for a bit, and he's taking his time, and more power to him. We don't bother him. We just send him memes and love, and that's about it. So it's good to take time, but also knowing when, you do have to stand and just push through. That's awesome. Do we have any other questions?
I actually have a question for the other panelists. Believe it or not, you guys are higher up in the years than I am. So, as a second year student, I'm just now finishing classes. I'm about to get this lit review published. Yes. And then I'm going to be transitioning into solely research. Do you have any pieces of insight that I need to, tap into right now, as we transition from that, early stages of that doctoral program into, really getting your thesis ready?
I'll say two things that I have. So I'm in my last semester of my second year going into my third year. Two things definitely. One is staying on track, to make sure that I'm actually on the right track in my program, like when to get ready for my dissertation, defense, and stuff like that. So that is definitely important. And the second one is self-discipline, because now that you're shifting gears from, because when you're taking classes, an assignment is due next week, you have to get that done, and even though you're still doing your research, like you're much more scheduled so that you can balance both your classes and your research work. But now that you're all doing research, and this time around you have your own projects that you're leading, sometimes it might get hard and tricky in terms of how you plan around your schedule and actually being consistent with following your daily routine. So if you can start practicing self-discipline and sticking to a routine, creating your routine, making sure that you're actually putting in quality time, because it's one thing to say that you work for 12 hours, it's another thing to say that within those 12 hours, I produce this quality work. So those are two different things. So staying on track with your program and making sure that you self-discipline yourself to prepare for that full-on research course track.
Yeah, I wish I had something really insightful to say. Um I don't. I feel like every university kind of works different, and how their setups are. And then you seem like you have a pretty great advisor, so um I think that, she'll take care of you and you'll be okay, and make sure that you have all the things that you need to do. I think mainly just staying focused, and not letting uh, what imposter syndrome try to take you out and tell you that you don't belong there. things like that. Or when you feel, I think this goes for all of us. When you feel like you're not progressing, sometimes projects seems very stagnant, or you can continue to hit a wall. It's like, that doesn't mean that I'm a failure. That doesn't mean that I don't belong here. What can I grab and take from this, that even though it's not working, what am I learning? You can turn that into a paper even still, even though it's not necessarily good in terms of the project. And so always just looking for new ways to innovate. Something I learned late in my research is like my 5th year late, is actually try to work with other grad students in your lab, even if it's not a project that your advisor gave you or things like that. We all want to publish, and we all want to, look good. When we work together and be like, you know what, I heard of something, let's go ahead and put this together. Yeah, we can have a paper together, and be around like-minded people that wants to push science forward. That'll take you way further than trying to do everything by yourself. At least in my lab, we're kind of siloed. Everybody kind of works for themselves. We have meetings, but all of our projects are so different that none of us really, we don't be like, let me help you on your project. But this last year, things had started getting pretty rough for me. And I was like, I ain't never gonna graduate unless I ask for some help. So I start asking everybody for some help. I'm like, hey, you want to help me? You can get on this paper. You know what I'm saying? And man, the help that I got from it was the outpour, and we're able to write like 3 papers in 3 months just from me actually talking to people. So it's just been amazing.
Those co-authors come clutch.
Oh yeah.
All right. Do we have any other questions from audience members? Nope. Oh, is that a comment? Oh, Tasha putting her name on the chat.
So Tasha, we're gonna get an invitation to your defense.
So what?
I said we're gonna get an invitation to your defense. I'm gonna
Oh
be
yeah.
there ready to root.
Listen, I am going to send it to Mr. Batson just in case he want to come in if he disperse it. Yeah, I'm excited to defend in the next month or two. You guys, I'm in Michigan. I'm originally from Florida. I'm ready to go.
I don't know how you did it.
It's too cold. I think the worst part is not even the cold, it's the shoveling of the snow
Oh,
and getting it off your car and all of that stuff,
Oh
man.
well, yeah, I understand that. Yeah. No. If it snows here, we really have to think about, is research important today? Because I do not do the snow. You'll get my email in like 2025.
My first year, I didn't leave if it snowed. Me and my advisor had an understanding, but then after the first year, he was like, "You've been here a year now, so like."
Let's do it.
right. Well, Mr. Batson, what do you think? We're at 8:21.
Yeah, I think if we don't have any more questions from the audience, I think we can wrap it up. I think it's time to wrap it up. Thank them for agreeing to come. I remember a comment that Dr. Sadiq Soccer made, who said now he's the chair of computer science engineering department at USF, and he remarked about our graduates leaving. He's just leaving. When they leave, I mean, they're just leaving, just spreading, that we're sending our best. And, and you four going to these universities, very prestigious university, we're sending our best. And you certainly have done a fabulous job, and you're great ambassadors for your families and for everyone and for USF, and we're very proud of you. So I want to thank you for agreeing to do this. It was a great conversation, and we're going to post this online. And as you know, I'm sure you're aware, and probably undergrads here are attending, and also Stan, the title was taken from the movie and the book a few years ago about Katherine Johnson, Black woman, and other Black females who were scientists doing in the 60s for NASA, and they never really received any credit for the work they did on behalf of the space race. So I think, you guys are all following very proudly in that legacy. And so we're very appreciative, and we thank you. And we really, really thank you. And so we're ordering copies of the book. So if anyone wants a copy of the book, only thing they have to do is just email me and we'll send it to you. And for those USF people, you can email me and you can pick it up at the dean's office. But we certainly thank you. Sade, any closing comments?
I have none. It was so nice meeting the folks that I didn't know, Tasha and Arissa. It was so nice to meet you and hear your stories. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Khadijah and Odanaka, always a pleasure to see familiar faces and to hear how you guys are doing. Honestly, I really, really enjoyed this. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I'm just dropping Mr. Batson's email so that people can actually email Mr. Batson.
I would also have to add, we have to thank Mr. Batson. I did not know where I would be without you. I don't know where USF would be without you, honestly.
I was so excited when I saw his email. And I was like, oh my God, Mr. Batson reached out to me first. I was like, yeah. It's so funny because the week before I joined an event where we had like 3 Black males come in as panelists, and I was like, wow, I can't wait to be in that position, like where I'm being a panelist, being able to give advice. And when I saw Mr. Bass's email, I was like, no hesitation, yes, I'm gonna do this. So it's always wonderful when I get opportunities to like give back to communities that really help me. So thank you, Mr. Batson. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Everybody's very welcome, and thank you for doing this. Thank you very much. And it's great to see everyone. Let's make sure we stay in touch, okay?
Yes.
Okay.
We will.
All right. Well, I guess we'll close out. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you to our lovely panelists and for Mr. Batson for putting on this event. And
Oh, I don't know about no more now.
Arissa, you
Your undergrad is the one that you go hard for.
No, not no more.
Wow.
The way USF be playing, we gonna pretend.
You went up there and you don't know how to ask, though. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, USF actually used to be good. That's outside the conversation, but like my freshman year undergrad, we were like smacking everybody. I don't know. So Wolfpack is what we're gonna say.
We'll circle back.
So I'm going to take a photo.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I'm going to take a group photo. Okay. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hope to reunite in person.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Good night.